I am waiting for my case to come up, and I am waiting for a new rebirth of wonder. I'm waiting for somebody to really discover America and wail. And I'm waiting for the discovery of a new symbolic Western frontier, and I'm waiting for the American eagle to really spread its wings and fly right. And I'm waiting for the age of anxiety to drop dead. And I'm waiting for the war to be fought that will make the world safe for anarchy. And I'm waiting for the final withering away of all governments, and I am perpetually awaiting a rebirth of wonder. I'm waiting for the second coming, and I'm waiting for a religious revival to sweep through the state of Arizona. And I'm waiting for the grapes of wrath to be stored, and waiting for them to prove that God really is an American, and waiting to see God on television piped onto church altars, if only they can find the right channel to tune in on. And I'm waiting for the Last Supper to be served again with a strange new appetizer. And I'm perpetually awaiting a rebirth of wonder. I'm waiting for my number to be called, and waiting for the Salvation Army to take over. I'm waiting for the meek to be blessed and inherit the earth without taxes. And I'm waiting for the forests and animals to reclaim the earth as theirs, and waiting for a way to be devised for all nationalisms to be destroyed without killing anybody. And I'm waiting for birds and planets to fall like rain, and waiting for lovers and weepers to lie down together again in a new rebirth of wonder. I'm waiting for the great divide to be crossed, and anxiously waiting for the secret of eternal life to be discovered by an obscure general practitioner. And I'm waiting for the storms of life to be over, waiting to write the great indelible poem. And I'm waiting for the rapture, and perpetually waiting a renaissance of wonder. Now, if any of you remember the columnist Sidney J. Harris, someone told me that he was a Unitarian Universalist. This is one of my favorite essays, Why Evil Always Defeats Itself. It's a comforting thought on a grim day that what keeps the world from falling wholly into crime and corruption is the psychological fact that evil is a separatist thing, while goodness is a unifying thing. We would be utterly under the rule of evil were it otherwise, for evil is industrious, while virtue is too often apathetic. Evil is cunning, while virtue is credulous. Evil is attractive and exciting, while virtue makes no similar appeal to the senses. But the one redeeming factor, the one element that tends to cancel out all the other advantages of evil, is that by its very nature it separates itself, not merely from the good, but from other evil as well. It is not only destructive, but self-destructive. Samuel Johnson put it pithily 2 centuries ago: combinations of wickedness would overwhelm the world, did not those who have long practiced perfidy grow faithless to each other. Thieves fall out. Thieves must fall out. It is their essential character, the mainspring of their behavior. They can have no enduring loyalty to one another, no basic trust, no disinterested activity. What is antisocial in them in the beginning turns into anti-one another in the end. And this is worth remembering in an age when evil seems ascendant, powerful, organized, and ruthless. when society assumes the dimensions of a magnified racket, when expediency becomes the mark of polity, when nations like sophisticated gangsters engage in promiscuous threats, bribes, blackmail, and all the lower forms of intimidation, it is not mere sentimentalism to insist that, barring some cosmic cataclysm, evil cannot survive. It cannot flourish, for it contains the seeds of its own destruction. Its center does not hold. It flies apart. It cannot cope with the one thing it wants above all: success. For success to have any meaning requires order, coherence, unity, proportion, equity. All of these factors are alien to the spirit of evil. Most of all, success calls for cooperation at the deepest level. And cooperation is impossible for the separatist spirit. Rival gangs kill one another off. Within each gang, struggles for power destroy the group. Hitlers and Stalins cannot maintain non-aggression pacts for very long. Tyrants are assassinated by their own lieutenants. The same instinct that drives a person into wickedness drives them to destroy and dominate their associates in the same enterprise. Evil, in its very nature, is self-defeating. In dark days, this truth is sometimes all that good people have to cling to. Over the ages, philosophers and poets have given many names to the Most High, to the source and goal of human existence. They've called it the Eternal, the Great Spirit, Grandmother, Ground of Being, Creative Interchange, Our Father, Mysterium Tremendum, the Goddess, the Infinite, the peace passing understanding in this time of meditation. I invite you to name quietly to yourself, or to call aloud your own name for that which undergirds, sustains, restores life, for the light that drives out darkness, for that which gives us hope when hope is hard to find. Thy will be done. Amen. Barbara mentioned that I got a lot of questions this week. Thank you all. I'd asked for folks to send me questions a week in advance to give me some time to think about it, and then they started pouring in on Wednesday and Thursday. So if I didn't get to yours, I apologize, but we will have a circle by the fireplace afterwards. These are the sermons that I'd gotten, the questions that I'd gotten by Monday. Are mind and brain the same thing? Experts tell us that the brain sorts out stuff while we sleep. It consolidates new learning. It's busy with other activities. So what do dreams do? Should we trust dreams to guide us when we're awake? And why do people have recurring dreams? Do you believe in auras? Don't they sometimes give us clues about what a person is like? And if that's not auras, then what is it? Martin Luther King Jr. once said that the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. Do you believe that? And do you think that since the world taken as a whole tends towards equilibrium, the current political situation will go to the other extreme as it tries to balance itself? When Trump is gone from the scene, will the U.S. be able to right itself? I would say left itself, but there's no such word. Who would be the best candidate to win the next election, politically speaking? And you know I can't answer that question. You know why I can't answer it? But just between you and me, it'd be FDR. What's the most important activity people of goodwill can do at this time? What theological implications flow from quantum physics? What is truth? Do we all have our own version, or is there one such thing as a single truth from a Unitarian point of view? Can we know some truths without any evidence? If a man robs a bank and nobody gets hurt and gives all the money to charity, and the charity feeds hungry kids and saves lives, did he do anything wrong? And my question is how to maintain hope and not descend into despair these days. Let me start with a story. A few years ago, I got invited to speak to an organization called the Association for Research and Enlightenment. Great name. Association for Research and Enlightenment. What it is, it's the outfit that was founded 100 years ago by the famous mystic and medium Edgar Cayce, who was born in Beverly, Kentucky in 1877, who became known as the Sleeping Prophet. I did not know that much about Cayce at the time. He was somewhat on the fringes of my knowledge. I knew that he believed in auras, that he talked to angels, that he believed in reincarnation, that he would go into a trance or sleep state, and during that state be able to diagnose and cure people's diseases. So I was a little startled, frankly, surprised to get this call, and I tried to explain to the conference organizers as graciously as possible that I wasn't a close follower of Edgar Cayce and was not sure that I shared all of Mr. Cayce's beliefs. And they said, well, that's just fine. We just want to hear from you and what you believe. And as a Unitarian, that won me over immediately, and I got invited back recently to give another talk on what animals have taught me about love and death. So regarding Edgar Cayce, I definitely do believe in faith healing. That was not one of the questions, but that's the answer. I believe in it. You know, I think some of those crutches that are hanging on the wall in the sanctuary in Chimayo are authentic. You know, if they're not, if you don't want to call them miracles, they represent inexplicable recoveries from some debilitating physical illness. And I also don't have any doubt that Edgar Cayce was able to go into some kind of hypnotic trance and receive visions where he could help people with their ailments. He had clients and supporters as prominent as Thomas Edison and George Gershwin and Woodrow Wilson. They were no dummies. And you know, what's apparent is that human beings, we are all psychosomatic creatures. And it's not always clear where the psyche ends and the soma begins, just as it's not always clear where lie the boundaries between fact and fiction. They sometimes get blurred, a little fuzzy. So when we're encountering a new person, meeting someone for the first time, we may get a sense of who they are, whether they're trustworthy. Is that an aura? Is it an intuition? Is it a vibe? Are they giving off some nonverbal cues? Probably all of the above. But sometimes those cues are on the mark, and sometimes they can lead us astray, just as dreams are often full of nonsense. Casey had some wonderful dreams, but he also had dreams that told him that the white, yellow, brown, red, and black race separate origins, that the red man originated on the lost continent of Atlantis, and that the cities of New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles would all be destroyed in a great apocalypse before the end of the 20th century. That was turned out to be incorrect. And yet, dreams do often convey information that's not available to the waking mind, that doesn't seem to be accessible by any other avenue. This was, for instance, the case with the German chemist Friedrich Kekule. Kekule had a dream one night. This was about the same time that Edgar Cayce was gaining fame among his neighbors in Kentucky by riding a mule that nobody else could ride. Kekule had his own dream. He dreamed of a snake eating its own tail. And in the morning, when he woke up, he realized that he solved the scientific problem that he and other chemists have been working on for years, the atomic structure of benzene. It's a ring of hydrocarbons joined head to tail, a good night's sleep, and voila, the problem solved. I've never had a dream like that. I think I spent my time dreaming through too many chemistry classes. But I do have a recurring dream. My recurring dream is that I'm in a house, and it seems vaguely familiar, like it's my house, although it's not a place I've ever actually lived in. And it has a suite of rooms somewhere in the back that I'm aware of that are, if not exactly creepy, just kind of vacant and unvisited and a little bit off limits. Now, the house, the home, is usually a symbol for the self, so I interpret this to mean that there are parts of my personality that I am not acquainted with, that maybe I don't even want to be acquainted with. The persona is a mini chambered thing, and not all of it is splendid. And there are some religious traditions. Hinduism is a great example. Maybe some strains of Gnostic and Kabbalistic Christianity and Judaism that suggest that our conscious egos are just fragments of a much larger Godhead or some eternal stream of thought, or to put it in more concrete imagery, that this world, our everyday sensory world, that this is all Vishnu's dream, that it's a passing fancy in the brain of the Creator, that this is all a phantasm, which is sort of the way that a physicist in one of my former congregations described this world. He said, based on his study, reality could be described as crystallized consciousness. And that was also the drift of the famous astronomer and particle physicist, the British scientist James Jeans, who wrote in his book, The Mysterious Universe, that 100 years ago, the universe was generally looked on as a machine. It was said that the final aim of science was to explain all the objects in the world, including living bodies, as machines, mere jumbles of atoms that would perform mechanical dances for a time under the action of blind, purposeless forces, and then fall back to form a dead world. Jeans went on, modern science gives little support to those materialistic views. When we pass to extremes of size in either direction, whether to the cosmos as a whole or the inner recesses of the atom, the mechanical interpretation of nature, it fails. We come to entities and phenomena that are in no sense mechanical. To me, Jean said, they seem less suggestive of mechanical than of mental processes. The universe seems to be more like a great thought than a great machine. The universe is more like a great thought than a great machine. That is, that's a big dream. That's a mighty thought. That is a powerful conception. And I think it's fair to say that many of the theoreticians who are working in the frontiers of physics would agree that there's some kind of, intelligence would be too strong a word, but some kind of mentality or subjectivity or intentionality woven into the universe at fundamental levels. And of course, to move from there to say that mind is manifest within our world, it's a big jump to say that the universe also has a moral foundation as well as a mental one. And I can make that move, but it's more of a leap of faith than a step of science. But it is a leap that our transcendentalist forebearers made. Thinkers like Emerson and Thoreau and Elizabeth Peabody and Margaret Fuller. They all took their name of transcendentalism from the brilliant German philosopher Immanuel Kant. Back then, being a philosopher meant you were a natural philosopher. You were interested in science as well as in abstract logic and metaphysics. And Kant had been one of the first to suggest that the astronomers who were gazing up into the heavens and seeing these little blurry smudges of light that they were calling nebulae, that they, no matter how much they ground their lenses, they couldn't resolve them into a pinpoint. Kant said they couldn't get a clear focus because they were so far away. These smudges were not in fact stars at all. They were what he called island universes, or what we now know to be galaxies. But in those days, science had started to have a corrosive effect on society. It had begun to have a corrosive effect because so many were insisting that the only truths we could know were the ones that we could access through the five senses, through sight and touch and hearing. This was called empiricism. If it couldn't be seen through a telescope, if it couldn't be weighed or measured or quantified in some way, counted, it simply didn't exist, which put preachers in a dither, among others, because if that's true, what happens to moral law? What happens to good and evil, right and wrong, justice, injustice? You can't do any experiment that verifies any of those things, and it was a quandary. Kant thought he had solved the problem by proclaiming that moral laws were like time and space, because nobody can weigh time. You can see objects existing in space, but you can't really see space. Kant said that we know time and space the same way we know moral laws. They are a priori. They are innate to the human mind. The world would not make any sense to us at all unless we believed in time and space, and unless we believed that theft and murder are somehow wrong. These are truths we just know, like the laws of geometry, or 2 + 2 = 4. And the Unitarian minister, Theodore Parker, he was another follower of Kant, and he was another of these transcendentalists, like Emerson and Thoreau. And it was Parker, long before Dr. King, who said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And I appreciate the emphasis on long. It takes a long time, very often. Misdeeds like robbing a bank, that's fairly easy to dismiss. It's wrong even in the short run. You know, what if everybody decided to go out after the service today and rob a bank and give all the proceeds to charity? Pretty soon, people would lose faith in the safety of our banking system. They would stop putting their money into banks, and there would be no more banks to rob. That's what Kant called the categorical imperative. Could you make theft or murder or lying or deceit or adultery or bullying or thuggery, could you make those the general rule for human behavior and expect society to function or survive? Well, we're kind of testing out that question at this moment. And I think it's well to remember that liars do often become so entangled in the meshes of their own treachery that they bring about their own downfall. I think it's well to remember that cheaters may prosper, at least temporarily, but to remember also that the conspiracies of small-minded men, of individuals who don't have any moral compass at all, they are almost always turning on each other because they're only in the game for themselves. There are some moral laws that do seem to be self-enforcing, like the law of gravity almost. And yet this rule that evil always defeats itself, well, doesn't always happen quickly or easily. I am not sure that nations or cultures actually do tend toward equilibrium or to homeostasis. I'm remembering that old novel, Lord of the Flies. Remember that? Wow. I'm not sure that a politics of divisiveness and bombast is automatically going to oscillate back into one of common sense and civility and goodwill. When Dr. King organized the bus boycott in Montgomery, when he marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, when he went to the Washington Monument and said, "I have a dream," it was not because he thought that, well, after 300 years of slavery and a century of Jim Crow, it's time for the pendulum to swing back towards racial justice and dignity. That was not his analysis at all. It was because for him, marching slowly, step by step, was the only thing that made moral and ethical sense in the immediate context of that particular moment, even if for him it was a journey to martyrdom and the cross. It was because he knew it wasn't going to be a short stroll. It was going to be a long walk to freedom. And for him, the question wasn't When am I going to get there? Or, when's the train going to reach the station of the promised land? The question he was asking himself is, am I using the power that I have to do what I can to change the world? It was a pilgrimage of faith. It was the kind of stubbornness and courage that keeps on plodding one foot after the next in the face of fire hoses, speaking out from behind prison bars, believing that it may take a long time, but not too long, because you still reap what you sow, because truth pressed to the ground will rise again, because no lie can live forever. Deep in his heart, those are the things he believed. The question for all of us is, what do we believe? And how will we use our power?